right, what's up, Travis?
Not much, dude. What's going on with you?
I am recording something, and you're on it, and you know that, so this is a weird intro.
It really is. It's very awkward, but that's our friendship.
Well, we're on... What day of the coronavirus are we on? Did people, start counting? Like, other states or other countries have counts?
I think people have done it sarcastically.
I don't know. I can't...
Let's just say because let's say Sunday was day one.
Okay. I can't tell whether people are serious or not.
Yeah, I can't either.
Like,
also,
everybody...
I got to the point where I'm numb to anything coronavirus, this and that, on any social media or news.
Right. Well, we won't talk about all the people that we know talking about this. But,
How about we talk about things that the reason why we're doing this, something to take our minds off of it.
Yes, I figured it was a good time to create content because I might actually have the damn thing. I'm not sure. I don't have a fever. I keep checking. My head feels kind of warm, but not like feverish. I'm not sweating. I don't know.
I mean, I do have you in my death pool for the coronavirus, so I'm just not going to say the date.
You realize you're going to feel really bad about that if something does happen to me, huh?
That's a you thing.
Oh, okay. I see how we're playing. So anyway, moving on from that. Now, we figured, like most people, it's a good time to start creating things while we're stuck at home for the most part. And so we're going to talk about things that we know, which is comic books. You are a comic book artist.
Yes, I am.
You are. Well, you write comics as well. I don't want to just pigeonhole you.
I mean, of what I've done professionally, it's only art, but I am a writer as well, yes.
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by professionally. You've made money off of books that you've written, or at least one.
Yeah.
And you're hoping to make money off of other ones.
Even though the writing credit wasn't on there, but we're not going to go into that.
You want to talk a little bit about what you've worked on before we get started?
Yeah. So, I've done, well, you know me from the Drink and Draw down there, and originally when you met me, I was just doing graphic design stuff for a t-shirt company down there, and when I moved to California, I was still doing graphic design stuff, but I really wanted to get into comics, and I started doing anthologies, and I want to say 2018 when I moved out here to Colorado, I've been doing this full-time now, so I've been... I did work on a project called Lucha that was a successful Kickstarter and was going to come out through Action Lab. Unfortunately, at this moment, it is probably canceled. I don't know for sure, but it's probably canceled. But I've done work for Devil's Due. That book's actually, I don't know what's going on with the shops right now exactly, but it's supposed to come out mid-April, this coming month. I'm also doing work currently for Full Moon Entertainment, doing a couple books there. I've done some fill-in pages for Boom, for the WWE Undertaker book, and also worked with our mutual friend Tim Laddie on UNICEF, who I also worked with on some of the Boom pages. There it is. That money's going to be mine in that jackpot.
All right, so that little joke about my mortality aside, so decided we're going to talk about comics now. What we're going to do is we each chose 3 random comic books. Could be something newer, could be something older. I went with a pretty wide mix. You actually went further than I did on what you chose.
Really?
Yeah, much
Not
further.
surprised.
I just kind of grabbed whatever I was gravitating towards. And just kind of stuff that I had been looking at recently, to be honest with you. But, so we're going to go back and forth and just talk about some of these comics. And, so which one do you want to start with?
So what I'll start off with, let me grab it. I'm going to start off with Wonder Woman Dead Earth.
Alright, let's see. Well, I'm just pulling it. You can't see it, but I pulled it up on the DC Comics page.
But that's one of their new Black Label comics. If no one's really familiar with that, DC launched this new line of books under the Black Label. I think that's supposed to replace the Vertigo line. I'm not sure.
It is.
But,
Vertigo's dead.
Yeah, it's like a 40. I think it's like a 48-page comic. It's a different size compared to a normal book. If people can see, if I line them up.
It's a prestige book.
Yeah, it's a prestige book. Kind of.
I guess. Do they make prestige format books really anymore?
As far as what I've seen lately, it's just these.
Yeah, the Black Label stuff is. I'm sorry?
Yeah. All the Black Label stuff is the prestige format.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to try this one out. I have two of them, actually, that I bought. I bought The Question, which I actually haven't gotten to read yet. I've been putting it off. And then I bought The Dead Earth because I'm a fan of Daniel Warren Johnson. Has that really kind of sketchy anime style I really dig.
Oh, he's the artist.
Yeah, he's the artist. He's the artist. Who else is on this? He did the story and the art on it, and really the only other people on it are the colorist, Mike Spicer, and the letterer is Russ Wooten on it.
Would you call that anime?
I would. He's very heavily inspired by it. You can just kind of get that feel of it when you actually take a look at some of the pages.
Okay. I'm just looking at the cover. He reminds me of Paul Pope.
Yeah, in a way, I just think the way he draws Daniel, I'm referring to, the way he draws action kind of reminds me of, I guess, the different animes I watch and manga I've read.
Uh-huh.
Really, it's going back to the book itself. Kind of a cool concept for the book. Wonder Woman kind of wakes up in a post-apocalyptic world, and it kind of does feel like it could be an anime or manga itself, the way the story is.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of this post-apocalyptic world. These kids accidentally wake her up while they're being attacked by this monster. She saves them, and then they take her back to their gang or village. And I don't want to give too much away about it, but the book itself, writing's pretty good. This is just book one. I don't know how many they're going to have in the series. I will pick up the second one. It was interesting enough. I thought it was supposed to tie into... There was like another Batman... I think another Black Label with Greg Capullo and Snyder where it was writing it.
I think you're confusing that with... I think that you're confusing that with Death Metal.
No, there's another book out there. I just can't think of it. I haven't read it.
Capullo and Snyder are doing a book called Death Metal where Wonder Woman's going to be the lead character, but it's the sequel to Dark Knight's Metal.
Okay.
And she, in the picture, it's her with, I think, like a mohawk, and she's got an electric chainsaw run by her lasso of truth.
No, I got, so it's called Last Night on Earth, and it's another Black Label book. And it's the cover.
Oh, that already came out.
Batman walk around with the head of the Joker.
Yeah, that already came out.
Yeah, but just kind of like I kind of knew the synopsis of that one.
Okay.
But it's kind of weird for me to have two Black Label books kind of be this, both of them be this post-apocalyptic thing.
Yeah.
They did not tie in.
Death Metal is also going to have this. I actually haven't even run across this one, Dead Earth. To be fair, I don't read comics as much as I used to, and I don't know how you feel about it. I'm pretty anti Black Label as an imprint. Yeah. I don't know have we talked about this?
Yeah, we have, yes.
Right. I mean, not on here, obviously, but I just don't. I liked Vertigo because it was a clear delineation. Like these books, I don't think you should have. So the one that really made me mad. We're not cursing on this. We're going to keep it pretty clean. The Batman, I don't remember what the Batman Black Label book was called. It might have just been called Batman Black Label. But, you know...
Batman Damned, I think.
Wait, what?
Damned. Batman Damned?
I think you're right. So, but Batman was drawn completely naked. You could see him in all his glory in multiple panels. And I'm sorry?
The Batwing.
Should I cut that out?
You're going to circumcise her?
No, I'm not. Oh, God. You're very pleased with yourself right now.
I am.
No, but I don't. I do occasionally frequent a comic book store, a local comic book store, and when the Superman Black Label book came out, they had a kid who was about to pick it up, and the kid looked like he was like 9 or 10, and I kind of had to stop him because I told the mom, I said, look, I don't know if there's any adult content in here. You know, I think that's the one, the Superman Black Label book was Superman Year One by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. And but I just don't like the idea that you have to warn children against reading a Batman or a Superman comic book. And I don't think there was anything too adult in the Superman one. I don't know if there is in Dead Earth, but I just... I don't have a problem with adult comics. I mean, I was reading Preacher when I was 13.
Yeah.
But there's a responsibility involved, and I don't like the idea that, like, there should never be a Batman book or a Wonder Woman book or a Superman book where a kid can't just pick it up. You know, and Marvel, to be fair, Marvel did it first. I don't know, do you remember the Spider-Man Reign book? R-E-I-G-N?
Yeah, I actually own it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've been told, it's basically Dark Knight Returns with Spider-Man. And
yeah.
Spider-Man's old and buck naked, and he sexed Mary Jane to death, to put it mildly. And, so Marvel did it first, and I don't know, I just think a lot of the, people talk about, like, why comics are going away, and to me, a lot of it is they've eliminated the ability for people to share that gift with their children at a time when, like, my generation, and you're a little bit younger than me, but basically the same generation, wants to give the next generation, like their kids and, nieces and nephews and what have you, we want to give them the things that inspired us, the comics that inspired us. And so I don't like the Black Label. I'm not crapping on Dead Earth. I haven't read it. And I honestly thought about reading The Question, because I know you said you were interested. I'm a big Question fan, And I even kind of understand, like, I could see a Question Vertigo book.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And, the Wonder Woman Dead Earth one, I know I've tossed the term manga and anime around a lot.
Well, you're talking about influences. I mean, it's valid.
Well, in terms of the art and even the story, for a bit, but it seems like what their DC wanted to do with this, they want to unify everything under one, because they're worried about brand confusion, and it seems like they want to kind of go this European kind of route, or even not necessarily a manga, because it's not the digest size at all.
You talk about art style. I mean, it's also not, right to left either.
Yeah, but it seems like that's the audience they're trying to target with, at least I'd say this book, it feels like. Because really, in terms of industry-wise, manga is definitely making money in terms of the print media.
Well,
I'm thinking they're trying to do with this Black Label and doing that.
Well, there is a giant kaiju behind her.
Yeah.
So, let's see. What do I want to go with my first one? I don't know. I know I recommended this to you. Let's see.
Real quick, because I didn't really say it. If anyone's out there curious about it, I would recommend to actually read that Wonder Woman book. It's actually good if you could still find it.
Right on. I want to recommend Punisher Kill Crew. I never read issue 1 because it had already come out by the time I picked this up. This was issue 2 that I started with.
The radar.
It did. It came out of the that Thor. What was it? Ragnarok? What was that event? I don't remember. But
War of the Realms.
War of the Realms. Yeah. The Jason Aaron book. And so this is the idea is that after War of the Realms, there were all these children who were orphaned, and that cuts to the heart of who Punisher is. You know, losing his wife and kids. So all these kids lost their parents. I mean, it's the opposite, obviously. Like in his case, he lost his kids. These kids lost their parents, and these kids watched their parents being killed by all these otherworldly creatures like dark elves and frost giants. And so the Punisher promises to exact vengeance on the behalf of the kids. And so he steals one of Thor's goats, or both of them. I can't remember. I don't have the book in front of me. I couldn't find it. But he dons this Asgardian war helmet, and then puts a piece of the black Bifrost. If you don't know what that is, Thor. I mean, if you've ever seen Thor, you've seen the Bifrost bridge in the movie. So they created a dark version of it called the Black Bifrost, and he stores a piece of it in his van to help him traverse the realms. And basically, he just goes off and kills, all these dark elves and frost giants, and just slaughters them. It's very gory. It's a little bit Walking Dead, as evidenced by the fact that Tony Moore drew the covers. But the art by Juan, I think his name is Ferreira. I don't know quite how to say it, but
Ferreira.
Yeah, his art is fantastic. It's written by Jerry Duggan, who at one point was writing Deadpool. It's very funny. I'm not a huge Punisher fan. It's a little dry for me, but this is very appropriate. Like, the Punisher...
More appropriate than him being Cosmic Ghost Rider?
Yes. Cosmic Ghost Rider, we've talked about this, is just Deadpool. Yeah. It's a cooler design, but it's Deadpool. There's nothing Frank Castle about it. And
well, I think, like, for that, when they did Cosmic Ghost Rider, Donny Cates wanted Ghost Rider to be Deadpool, and they probably said, no, who else can we use? Okay, use just Punisher.
Right. And that doesn't feel right. Like, the tone of it, like, the jokes from Cosmic Ghost Rider are coming from Frank Castle. In this, the humor is kind of visual, and the Punisher really doesn't... I mean, he's the straight man in the book, and they have various guest appearances. Foggy Nelson I can mention, but I don't want to mention any of the other ones. But it's just... It reminded me of why I love comics. Like, I picked this book up, like, what is this? And I remember this splash page of Thor killing something with his Viking helmet on. And this art was amazing, and I was just like, what is this? Like, I miss that feeling. And look, I'm all for adult comics. I'm all for them. I've been reading them since I was like 13, 14 years old. To varying degrees. I'm not just talking about Preacher. I'm talking about, like, comics with more depth, I'm fine with that. But there's something about a comic that you pick up, and it's just fun, and it makes you feel like you're 14 again. And Punisher Kill Crew, I never got the first issue. I bought the other 4 because it's a 5-issue miniseries. I understand why this didn't go on, but there's a part of me that's just like, couldn't it?
Yeah. Well, it seems like Marvel these days are doing more. If it's not they're more their flagship books. They're trying more miniseries. Mm-hmm. Especially to the big events, like I'm pretty sure Kill Crew was a tie-in for that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was right after War of the Realms. It came after the last issue, but yeah, it said War of the Realms tie-in on it somewhere. And
now, with the stories in each one, were they interlocking? Was it one arc, or were they one and done?
No. It's one long story about so. Punisher promises to kill this one frost giant, but he also promises to kill all the other various demons that killed the other. Because I think there's like 8 kids.
Yeah.
And but he has to find them. He doesn't know, so he uses this magic van and Thor's goats to go through the various realms and find these demons. I don't know what else to call them, just various like magical type beings. Because there's all kinds of different ones, and some of them have never been seen before in a Thor book. and all he has to go on is the kids drew illustrations of the monsters. So he's got like an 8-year-old kid's, idea of what a like 3-headed Blorgon. I don't know. I'm just making, but it's
Blorgon.
I don't know, I'm making something up, but yeah, it's so fun. And the art. I don't know where Juan Ferreira is right now, but I'd love to see him on something bigger. He could have picked up Thor. He could have picked up an X-Men book. This guy's very talented, and his art style has a little bit of Tony Moore and like Art Adams and other types of artists. But yeah, so love that book.
I would say I had to check it out. I know you told me about it. It had to be like last year, late last year. You were telling me about it, but I still have to pick it up and give it a look. But actually, and my next one will segue into that because I end up going more towards back issues or what's in bargain bins, and this is where I found my last one, which is the Ghost Rider, Wolverine, and Punisher, which is art by
John Romita Jr.
Jr. and wrote it. Howard Mackey and Klaus Janson actually inked it as well.
It's funny. I remember when this book came out, and Howard Mackey was writing a lot of Spider-Man books and various other things. Howard Mackey is also the name of Cher's costume designer. And so when I was a little kid, just like, so there's an editor named Ralph Macchio.
He also draws, is what you're telling me.
No, but there's also a Marvel editor named Ralph Macchio. And as a little, as like a 12, 13-year-old kid, I was always like, I don't know, I guess I never got it through my head. This is a stupid story to tell, but I never got it through my head that this wasn't the same person. I was like, the Karate Kid ended up editing comics at Marvel. But yeah, so Howard Mackey, I always think of him as like Cher's. It's a dumb story for me to tell.
Oh, no, it is.
Thank you.
But as far as the story itself is not great. One of the only reasons I bought the book was the awesome gatefold that it has. It just doesn't do it justice. What you're seeing in the camera right now.
Right.
But, I mean, this is a bargain bin book. Like, $3. It's a one-shot cardstock cover. This is when Marvel was trying to pool their anti-heroes into one book for this one shot.
Uh-huh. And, back then there was a lot of like every other issue of Wolverine, Cable would pop up, or this was before Deadpool became popular the first time around. Because this is actually Deadpool's second time of being popular. I guess third, but either way. Ghost Rider would pop up in various things for no reason. Ghost Rider was an X-Men early, Well,
this is the Danny version of it. So it's like 91, I want to say, when this came out.
Mm-hmm.
And this is this early one, and just so you know, I'm not a big fan of John Romita Jr.'s Ghost Rider in this, the way he drew it.
Okay.
Punisher looks great. Wolverine looks great. But there's something about the way the Ghost Rider's skull is. It looks a little goofy for me.
Understood. I mean, at this point, John Romita Jr. was like the Punisher artist.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. And you could see it. I mean, this book is crazy in terms of, like, the action scenes. And this basic story is Blackheart is, at this point, banished by Mephisto and wants to get revenge on his father. So he finds a way, which they don't explain. Somehow draws Punisher, Ghost Rider, and Wolverine all together, and they all stay at this one person's house that has, like, what is it, like the rooms for rent.
Mm-hmm.
And the daughter, there's a mother-daughter involved in there, and the whole point of the book, it's going to give away spoilers, but Blackheart uses the family and the kid as leverage to get them to do what he wants, which is helping them take down Mephisto.
This is a 30-year-old book, so I think spoilers are fine.
So I'm not really worried about that too much.
Blackheart hasn't been used a lot over the years, but he is like the spiritual son of Mephisto or something like that. Like a
Just look at that, though. I mean, like,
right.
it's a cool drawing. It's a crazy book. The book looks great. It's just the story is not. It's not as great as the art is in it.
It was the 90s.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Howard Mackey was busy designing costumes, so he didn't have as much time to put into his comic book work.
Yeah, that's usually the same reason. Like when something's crazy like that, when my wife and I watch like an '80s movie, like do you remember The Secret to My Success with Michael J. Fox?
Come on.
I'm just asking. Do you remember it? Yes. So,
Hell
yes.
yeah.
So like every time, like she's like, so he works in the mailroom and he's an executive. I'd be like, it was the '80s. They made this movie in the '80s. Just go with it.
And then they had the Scooby-Doo sex chase.
Pretty much, yeah. They kept changing drums, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they have this in it? It was the '80s. Is what my usual response to that, and that's what I would use for this. Except it was the '90s.
Here's the thing: the '80s and the '90s, people bash '90s books, and there's a reason to. There's definitely '90s excess towards like '96, '97, but
yeah.
The thing that the '90s had in common with the '80s and the '70s, they were still fun. Like things could happen that didn't make sense, and you didn't really question it because you just bought into the universe. You know, now you don't have that. Comics aren't fun anymore, so when something ridiculous happens, you know, with the advent of postmodern comics where everything's supposed to be taken seriously, it just doesn't work.
I mean, this book is fun just from the art, because the art is pretty great. Everything's kind of just jumping off the page when I'm just flipping through the pages while I'm talking to you. The art alone is probably a good reason. If you could find the book, I would tell you. I found this at a local comic shop called Newcastle Comics in Longmont out here in Colorado, and they have like it was $3, and for me, I was like, oh, this is cool. Especially because it's I don't know how many pages, maybe about 40 something pages.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they got that cool gatefold.
I mean, it was the '90s. You know, there's got to be like 100,000 copies out there somewhere or something like that.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I looked into it because I was just curious because I wanted to make sure, like I was talking about the right thing because like if this was the first one shot, because there's some other stuff that they did with those 3 characters again as a one shot, and luckily for me, I found out that not only did they have more, they also did released a Toy Biz set of toys.
Oh yeah.
If you can find me, I'm a big fan of the Toy Biz.
Yeah, it's visible. It's visible.
Is it FAO Schwartz? They apparently had some deal with Marvel, and they would do these special toy sets that were just released in their store, and one of them was a Punisher, Ghost Rider, and Wolverine toy. Looks like I know for sure the Ghost Rider is a repaint one, repackaged, because during the mid 90s, I want to say, they were trying to get Ghost Rider turned into a cartoon show, and they released a toy line to coincide it. And it's basically just a repaint of that Ghost Rider, that main Ghost Rider toy. I've never seen the other Wolverine that's in there. But then I'm going a little off topic because I can talk about Toy Biz figures for a while.
Yeah, I don't have any insight on that, so it's kind of a... I mean, not to say that you can't talk about it, I just don't have anything to say. You're more of a toy person than I am.
But yeah, but going back to it, because like I said, there's Hearts of Darkness, there's a few other one shots with just those 3, teaming up again.
Right on.
But I not a great story. If you want something cool to look at, I would, and you find it for a decent price, I'd pick it up. But if it's more than $3, I wouldn't pay for it, to be honest.
Gotcha. I mean, 90s comics are always worth picking up. Don't pay a lot for them, but you'll find something fun. Even if you don't know what's going on, you'll find something fun in an old 90s comic. Usually.
Well, I'd asked the question for you earlier when you were talking about what is it? You were just talking about them. Punisher and the Kill Crew. There we go.
Right.
I was asking if that was like, each one was a one and done, and by one and done, I mean, like, full story, and then the next issue comes out.
Right.
Instead of an arc.
Instead of serialized, yeah.
Yeah, you don't really get, at least for modern comics that I have been reading, you don't really get that too much now. And I kind of enjoy that, and that's kind of why I go and dig through bargain bins sometimes and just find cool one and done stories. And for my last one, I'll talk more about that when I get to it. But that's kind of how I feel about this other one I picked for my third one.
Right on. I guess we'll go to my second one, which no spoilers, but it's Strange Adventures, the new book. Is it Tom King wrote this?
Yes, Tom King.
Tom King. So it's Tom King written. Mitch Gerads, who did Mr. Miracle with him, which I didn't get to read the whole thing. I'm hoping to buy the trade eventually. And also Evan Doc Shaner, who did some of the Hanna-Barbera stuff. And like Johnny Quest and what have you. Future Quest, I think, was the main book that he was on.
What did Doc do on that?
He was the artist. He didn't do the whole thing though. He couldn't keep up. I think he only did like 2 or 3 issues. So on this, so the way this book works is, half of it takes place on Earth and the other half takes on Ran, which is, if you don't know Adam Strange, he's kind of an old-fashioned space hero, like Flash Gordon type of character. Yeah, so, I mean, Flash Gordon's pretty comparable to what it is, basically. But he gets zapped up from Earth on this thing called a Zeta Beam, and he only has a certain amount of time on planet Rand before he gets sent back to Earth. And he's got a wife and a daughter. And, so, half the book takes place on Earth, the other half takes place on Rand. And there's things that are amiss when you see him on Earth. And then Doc Shaner Doc Shaner has a very cartoony style. I'm a big fan of his art. And so all the stuff that takes place on Rain is really fun and, Silver Age, DC Comics. And then the stuff with Mitch Gerads is very modern comics. And it's a mystery. I guess I can say it's a murder mystery. But the thing is, like, I'm not judging it based on the first issue. I will say that, like, I heard something from Tom King when he was writing... What was the name of that book where there was a murder mystery and it was like all the superheroes were involved and a bunch of heroes got killed?
Oh, are you talking about the recent thing that Tom King did?
Yeah. It was some kind of...
Someone called it Safe Space.
It was some... No. It was some type of crisis, but...
it's something...
It wasn't very good. It ruined a lot of characters.
I didn't bother reading it. I'm not the biggest Tom King fan.
You're good. Well, I mean, did you ever read any of his Vision or Mr. Miracle?
I have that. I'm not big... I've tried reading some of his Batman run. Wasn't a huge fan of that.
His Batman run's not good.
Miracle was pretty good.
Which one?
But that was about it.
Which one was good?
Mr. Miracle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the problem is, when he was doing that Crisis story, Heroes in Crisis, that's what it was called, Heroes in Crisis. Yeah. He did an interview...
Safe Space. I thought it was.
No, it wasn't Safe Space. He did an interview because Heroes in Crisis was not reviewed very well by anybody, and he made this comment about like how all his stories are basically about the various stages of grief and PTSD because he's a military veteran. And the problem is like once he kind of pulled the facade away, how many books can you
see?
Huh?
Now that's all you see in his books.
Right, like how many books are you going to do on that? Is that the only story you have to tell is like PTSD? Like I was hoping Strange Adventures...
Depressing in person?
Huh?
Do you think he's really depressing in person? Like everyone's hanging out with him and he just is a bummer, like one of those buzzkills?
Uh-huh. The Tom the King of Depression, yeah. No, so yeah, I mean, I'm not bombing the book. It wasn't bad. I just, do I really want to keep reading another story about post-traumatic stress disorder? Especially, God knows right now. like, but I mean, I'm not giving it a bad review. It was fine. But when I read Mr. Miracle, I remember thinking, like, wow, this is really good. When I read the first issue of Vision, same thing. And now that it's like, okay, this is just what he does. It's kind of like when I first started reading Brian Michael Bendis books. Like, I was like, oh, man, this is so fresh and different. And after a couple of years, it's like, oh, his style never changes. Every book is written the exact same way. Every character is written the exact same way. And it's just, the illusion's gone.
Yeah.
So, sorry to be a bummer. Like, I mean, I don't think I've given away any spoilers. Check it out for yourself. But
I still want to actually read it. It sounds interesting. What I did know, I didn't know it was going to jump back between the two artists, between Mitch and Doc. But that kind of reminds me, was that a few years ago when they had that Moon Knight run where they would change the artist based on the version of Moon Knight. Mm-hmm. Which was a pretty cool idea, and one of probably the better versions of that run of Moon Knight. I'm trying to think who wrote that run, because this was a few years ago.
How long ago? Like
maybe about 2 years, maybe.
Okay, this isn't the Warren. This isn't the Warren Ellis Doc Shelby run, is it?
No,
Declan Shelby rather. Okay, was it after that run?
Yeah.
Okay, because a bunch of Pete Woods, I think, was the artist after Declan Shelby.
Well, they come up with new one, and I think they renumbered it.
Okay, I think it's that run, but either way, so they changed artist every issue.
They would change out the artist based on which version of Moon Knight it is, because of the different personality.
Yeah.
That's what it just reminds me of.
No, I gotcha. Do you want to jump to your last book?
Yeah. So, as I was saying, and it's kind of a good jumping off point from yours, like, because I go more towards some older comics lately, and this one is from the 80s, Megaton Man. Uh-huh. And I personally, before I found it in the 50-cent bargain bin, I've never heard of the character, but I did hear of the publisher, which is Kitchen Sink Comics, who makes one of my favorite books, Xenozoic or Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Uh-huh. So I picked it up. It was like, just check it out, and after reading it, it's basically almost the Tick version of the Tick who can fly.
Right. It's
full of satire, really fun visuals. Even if you take a look at the way he's drawn, he even looks a little bit like a muscle-bound flying Tick.
Right. I remember I never read the book. I remember the character because I remember always thinking like, oh, he looks like Cyclops but with a cape.
Yeah, he does look like Cyclops,
like original, Kirby Cyclops.
Yeah, it's a really fun book. If people can actually find it, I don't know if they could probably find anything besides maybe back issue bins.
Yeah, I'm looking on Amazon, and it says comics $5.99 used. So I don't know, and it's the same. I put issue number 6 in, so yeah. I don't know if this is like somebody who sells on the Amazon Marketplace, sells old books. Would you pay $6 for it?
Would I pay $6 for it?
Oh, plus $3.99 shipping. So it's $10
for one issue, or for just one issue.
It looks like $10. It says buy new. Only one left in stock, but I don't know.
I'm not a huge collector for this or anything like that. I would buy, if it was like a trade or something, I would probably pay, depending on if it was in print or out of print, it could go anywhere between $20 and $40 where I would think about actually spending, depending if it's a trade.
Right.
But
it's almost certainly not worth $10 if you're on eBay.
If you can find it, I don't know where people could probably find this besides a bargain bin. just a little bit about this issue, and I mentioned it last time. Since this is Megaton Man number 6, this is they do mention stuff that's like kind of happens in the last issue, but it's kind of its own little story. It wraps up by the end. It touches on funny things like for his secret identity, he's a mild-mannered reporter, but he's basically just wearing a suit over his super suit. The entire time. Everyone knows it's him, and he thinks people haven't noticed yet.
It's a Superman joke.
Yeah. But
totally. Probably before people were doing those jokes en masse.
Well, like I said, it's like if you look at the Tick, which I just wanted to be sure before I said this. This came out before the Tick, and I don't know if it inspired the character or not. But the Tick was, the others kind of spoof on superheroes.
The Tick's kind of inspired by everything.
Yeah.
The joke is the comics industry in general. Like, there's a Wonder Woman pastiche. There's a Batman is Deflator Mouse. Yeah, Deflator Mouse. I was trying to remember because they had to change the name to Batman for the live action show. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, your best bet is finding this in like a quarter bin or something like that.
Yeah, if you can find it, I'd say if you can find it cheap, definitely pick it up because it is funny. They have some really funny visuals where these guys are because he's trying to kill him, and he's basically completely indestructible. And there's this one scene where these bad guys are trying to shoot a laser at his building, and they end up erasing the entire floor, and then the top of the building just drops on top of him, and he's just sitting there, and he's all fine and everything. And he's like, "What was that?" And just it's just funny the way that that this has. Here you go, a little bit of the scene where you can just see the kind of laser just passing through him, and the building just missing the entire layer and just drops on top of him. Yeah, and he's completely fine and just kind of dazed after that. But if you can find it, I totally. If I can find more single issues, I'd probably pick them up.
Is this 70s or 80s?
80s.
Okay.
Mid 80s.
So it was probably right before the Tick then.
Tick came out in 86. This was 85. This particular issue.
Okay. All right, my last one is, I'm actually a huge J. Michael Straczynski fan. Going back to being a little kid, watching He-Man, She-Ra, Real Ghostbusters, Captain Power. I didn't know at the time that I was a J. Michael Straczynski fan, but he did all that, and eventually he did Babylon 5, which is, to this day, still my favorite show ever. But, so I mean, I don't read everything he does, but quite a lot. I think he was responsible for making Spider-Man good again in the early 2000s, because Spider-Man really fell a long way before he took over. But eventually he decided to do some DC work, and he did this book, Superman Grounded, starting with Superman number 701. It's got this really terrible John Cassaday cover. I'm a fan of John Cassaday's work on Astonishing X-Men and especially Planetary, but everything he's done outside of those two books, he really half-asses. And he's done some really ugly covers that he's gotten paid a lot of money for. But I'll always remember this awful Superman 701 cover. But I picked it up the other day from Showcase Comics out in Slidell, Louisiana. And the reason I picked it up was because I was watching some YouTube video when they were complaining about it, and it was like, I don't want to bitch about people, but there's so many people now that talk about comics that.
What were they particularly complaining about? If you can make it brief.
They were basically, so this issue has, I think 3 or 4 pages dedicated to Superman stopping a girl from killing herself. And this was around the time that they did not Neil Gaiman, Grant Morrison did All-Star Superman. And I don't know if you remember, but there's like a 1-page. It might have been 1 panel
Oh, I
piece.
know exactly it's a page because it's a couple panels, but that's been circulated for a while
Right.
about when talking depression and suicide.
Well, so in the All-Star Superman one, it's just him stopping the girl and saying, "By the way, your therapist really did get caught in traffic. He wasn't abandoning you." That's the whole panel. And it's a good panel. I'm not complaining about it. All-Star Superman is arguably my favorite Superman book. It's an amazing book. All credit to Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. But the pages in this one, it's him legitimately talking about life and like trying to convince a girl not to kill herself. Like, not to bash it, but to be fair, like the All-Star Superman's pretty simplistic. All he says is like, "Oh, don't worry, like your therapist didn't really abandon you," and then he goes off. Well, I mean, there's more problems there, In Superman number 701, he tries to talk the girl into. Now, this is going to involve a spoiler, but he tries to talk the girl to walking off the ledge by herself. And she makes him promise that if she, after listening to him, decides to jump off the building, that he won't stop her. He'll let her die. And so he promises, and at the end of the pages, the cop goes like, "So that was all a joke, right? You weren't really going to let her kill herself." And he just kind of quietly walks away. And I don't think they're in competition. Even though they came around the same era. I mean, they might have been within a year of each other. And I don't know which one came out first. I'll assume it's All-Star Superman. But the whole part of Grounded was Superman kind of like getting back in touch with humanity and figuring out things. Like, because there had been a lot of weird stuff going on with Superman at the time. I think that was right after James Robinson's World of Krypton arc, where the Kryptonians were still alive and trying to take over the Earth and like all this stuff. So, I mean, it's literally a grounded arc. It's him basically pulling a Forrest Gump. Like, he's just walking the country.
Number one, wasn't Fred Derek Donovan working on this one with Superman Grounded? I thought he was working on that. Or
I don't know. I'm going to admit something. I like this issue. I feel like the art, like I lost interest after a few issues.
Yeah.
It probably should have been a one and done. But it kept going. So, and I don't even think I think he went to Wonder Woman pretty quickly after that.
Are you talking about J. Michael Straczynski?
Yeah. I don't know if Derek did an issue. He might have.
Because I think he did work on that. Because I remember he was talking about this, but I've never read that run personally.
I'd love to buy some Straczynski pages from him.
Yeah,
if he even has them.
If anything, he's probably out of them by now.
Derek Donovan's a comics pro that we know that's been in the industry since the early '90s.
Yeah, Legion, I think was the one he started out
on. It was that book that had Lobo, but it wasn't Legion. It might have been. You know what? I think you're right. I think it was Legion. Yeah. Not Legion of Superheroes, but the
Legion at the time.
And he did the issue where Kyle Rayner's girlfriend got stuck in a refrigerator, to put it mildly.
I forgot he drew that.
I'll never forget. That's the most famous thing he's done.
Like
that's. I'm not laughing about the fact that a woman got stuck in a refrigerator, put in a refrigerator. I'm just saying, like, that became a thing, but not even at the time. It became a thing like 10 years later. Like, Gail Simone made it into. She has a website called like Women in Refrigerators, and but at the time, like, people were like, "Oh, this is horrible," like, it's not like offended, but like, this is so crazy that they did this,
Yeah.
But nobody was offended that I know of.
It's something else. By the way, going back to Superman, and this one you said it was 701 for the Superman Grounded, right?
Right.
That arc. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, and it just from me thinking about the way you described that, and having read All Star Superman, I think people probably think the All Star one is better, mainly because they probably think it accomplishes everything that Grounded did probably in one page versus a whole book about
this
it.
this was some random listicle website. I'm not going to name them. It's a popular one. I just the whole thing was like something like the 5 most horrifying things a superhero's ever done or something like that, and it just trashes it. And don't get me wrong, like as a whole, obviously All-Star Superman's a way better Superman arc than the Superman Grounded trade paperback that you can buy. Like, no question. I mean, if you're looking for something to read while you're in quarantine, you're able to, whether you do it digitally or you're able to stop at your local comic shop, whatever you can do. If you've never read All-Star Superman, absolutely buy the trade or the hardcover.
You don't know which came first, huh?
I don't, but I think it was All-Star Superman. I don't know about the particular issue, but I suspect it was All-Star Superman. But I don't. Straczynski's not the type to steal other people's ideas. It's probably something he wanted to do, and
Yeah.
So.
Thinking about it, because we've been talking about these books, and we keep if you can find it, blah blah blah. But I guess we've been talking about this. I kind of forget about the whole coronavirus thing at the moment. And a lot of stores are open, but they're doing a curbside or you can order. And if you are looking, at least maybe I know for sure you could probably find the Punisher and Kill Crew, and you could definitely find the Wonder Woman books. Call in or email your stores if you're listening to this and want to check those out. The Megaton Man, the other stuff we're talking about, it might be a lot harder.
Yeah, you're not going to find that. You're not going to find Superman number 701 unless they just have time to go dig through their pile and get it for you.
You can always ask them to go dig around for Megaton Man number 6 specifically.
I don't. Depending on the comic shop, you might get like kind of a rude, like, "Are you serious?" What now? But that's all.
Showcase and they have that, they might be like, "Oh, you can just have
it." Don't say that out loud. No. All right. Well, there's a couple other things I want to talk about, but let's cut this off right here.
Okay.
And make this its own video because we're at an hour and probably about an hour.
That could be cut out, though. I'm imagining because I kind of. Drolled on about Megaton Man in the page.
No. I mean, that's what we're here to do is put out content. But let's.
That might be boring talking about that page or showing that page.
But I did want to talk about a couple of things. So, we're going to cut out here, and obviously we'll be wearing the same things. So you'll notice in the next video where.
You want me to be like, I could change a shirt real quick and then add glasses?
Oh, Megaton Man. But maybe I could put on a real shirt instead of a wife beater. But all right, so thank you, Travis, and that'll do it for this particular episode.
Yeah, I'm glad I was a part of it. It was actually pretty fun, kind of going through and finding the issues I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, we'll keep doing these as much as we can. Like, my collection isn't what it used to be, but but we'll also talk about other comics, and maybe we'll have other people on that we know that want to talk about old comics.
Oh, yeah. A bunch of those people, yes.
And my apologies to people for this coughing. You're probably sitting there thinking, like, this dude's dying. But all right. And Travis, see you in like 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah. See ya.
All right, thanks.